Government just changed this. New OAS eligibility rules, plus CPP enhancement for Canadian seniors. Something has shifted. If you're a Canadian senior, or you're planning to retire in the next few years, what I'm about to walk you through could directly affect the money you receive from the government every single month. This isn't speculation. This isn't a rumor circulating on social media. The federal government has quietly introduced changes to old age security eligibility requirements, and simultaneously, they've adjusted the timeline and structure of the CPP enhancement that was supposed to deliver higher retirement benefits to millions of Canadians. Most people haven't noticed yet. The announcements were technical, the language was bureaucratic, but the implications are real. And if you don't understand what's happening right now, you could be leaving money on the table, or worse, you could be caught off guard when your benefits don't match what you were expecting. My name is Joseph, and today we're going to break this down piece by piece. Let's start with what's been happening behind the scenes. For years, Canadian pension policy has been relatively stable. The Canada Pension Plan and Old Age Security have been the bedrock of retirement income for millions of Canadians. These aren't just government programs. For many seniors, especially those without workplace pensions or significant savings, CPP and OAS represent the majority of their monthly income. But over the past 18 months, there have been quiet signals from Ottawa that changes were coming. Policy analysts began noticing language shifts in federal budget documents. Pension experts started warning that demographic pressures, rising costs, and fiscal constraints were creating tension within the system. The Parliamentary Budget Officer released reports showing that the cost of OAS is projected to increase significantly over the next 2 decades as the baby boomer generation ages. At the same time, the CPP enhancement that was introduced back in 2019, which promised gradually increasing contribution rates and higher replacement income for future retirees, has been moving through its scheduled phases. But now, something has changed. In recent weeks, the federal government has introduced regulatory amendments that alter both the eligibility framework for old age security and the implementation timeline for certain CPP enhancement provisions. These changes were not introduced through a major announcement. They were embedded in technical regulatory updates published by Employment and Social Development Canada and the Canada Revenue Agency. Most Canadians didn't see it, most media outlets didn't cover it in detail, but pension experts did. Advocacy groups for seniors did. Provincial governments are starting to ask questions. And now, we need to talk about what exactly is happening. Let's break this down into 2 parts: the OAS changes and the CPP enhancement adjustments. First, old age security. Under the previous framework, Canadian seniors became eligible for OAS at age 65, provided they met residency requirements. Specifically, you needed to have lived in Canada for at least 10 years after turning 18 to qualify for a partial pension, and 40 years to qualify for a full pension. The new regulatory changes introduce what the government is calling a verification enhancement process. What does that mean in plain language? It means the government is tightening how it verifies residency history. Seniors applying for OAS will now be required to provide more detailed documentation proving their time lived in Canada. This includes tax records, employment history, rental agreements, utility bills, and in some cases, affidavits from third parties. The government says this is about program integrity. They say it's about ensuring that only those who genuinely meet residency requirements receive benefits. But pension advocates are concerned. They're concerned because many seniors, especially immigrants who arrived in Canada later in life, or those who worked in cash-based industries, may not have complete documentation going back decades. The second change involves the income testing threshold for OAS clawback, also known as the OAS recovery tax. Currently, if your individual net income exceeds a certain threshold, approximately $86,000 as of 2024, you begin to lose a portion of your OAS benefits. For every dollar you earn above that threshold, you lose 15 cents of OAS until your OAS is completely clawed back at around $142,000 in income. The new rules adjust how certain types of income are counted in this calculation. Specifically, the government is now including previously exempt income sources, such as certain registered retirement income fund withdrawals and specific types of investment income that were not fully captured before. This means some seniors who previously stayed just below the clawback threshold may now find themselves subject to the recovery tax. Now, the CPP Enhancement. The CPP Enhancement was designed to gradually increase the amount of employment income covered by CPP and to raise the income replacement rate from 25% to 33% over time. This was supposed to help younger Canadians retire with more income from CPP. The enhancement is being phased in over several years, with both contribution rates and the maximum pensionable earnings increasing annually. What's changed is the government has introduced a deferral mechanism for certain benefit increases that were scheduled to take effect for new retirees starting in 2025. Essentially, some of the expected benefit enhancements are being pushed back by 12 to 18 months, depending on your birth year and when you plan to start collecting CPP. The government's stated reason is administrative. They say the Canada Pension Plan Investment Board and Service Canada need more time to align systems and ensure accurate benefit calculations. But the result is clear. Some Canadians who are expecting higher CPP payments starting next year will have to wait longer. So, who does this actually affect? Let's start with OAS. If you're already receiving old age security, these changes will not retroactively affect your current benefits. Your monthly payment will continue as usual. However, if you're turning 65 in the next 12 to 24 months and you're planning to apply for OAS, you need to be prepared for a more rigorous documentation process. This particularly affects immigrants who became permanent residents or citizens later in life, Canadians who lived abroad for extended periods, seniors who worked in informal or cash-based employment, anyone who may not have kept detailed records of their residency history. For the income clawback changes, this affects middle to upper middle income retirees. If your annual retirement income is between $80,000 and $150,000, you need to review how these new income inclusion rules may affect your OAS entitlement. Now, for CPP. The deferral of enhancement benefits primarily affects Canadians born between 1963 and 1970 who are planning to retire in the next few years. If you were counting on a specific CPP benefit amount based on the original enhancement schedule, you may now receive a lower initial benefit, with the full enhanced amount only kicking in 12 to 18 months later than originally planned. This also affects financial planners, retirement advisors, and anyone who has been building a retirement income plan based on the published CPP enhancement timeline. Let's talk real numbers. For OAS, if you're subject to the new documentation requirements and you're unable to provide sufficient proof of residency, you could see a reduction in your OAS entitlement, or in some cases, a delay in receiving benefits while your application is under review. A full OAS benefit for 2024 is approximately $700 per month. If your residency documentation is incomplete and you're only approved for a partial pension, you could be looking at a reduction of $100, $200, or even $300 per month. Over a year, that's $1,200 to $3,600 in lost income. For a senior living on a fixed income, that's significant. For the clawback changes, let's use an example. Say you're a retiree with $90,000 in annual income. Under the old rules, if certain investment income wasn't fully counted, you might have stayed below the clawback threshold. Under the new rules, that same income might now push you $4,000 over the threshold. At a 15% clawback rate, you'd lose $600 in OAS benefits annually. It's not catastrophic, but it's real money, and it's money that retirees weren't planning to lose. For CPP, the deferral of enhancement benefits means that someone who was expecting an additional $50 to $75 per month in CPP starting in 2025, may not see that increase until mid-2026. Over 18 months, that's $900 to $1,350 in deferred income. Again, for someone on a tight retirement budget, this matters. So why is the government doing this? Let's be clear. I'm not here to defend or attack the government. I'm here to analyze the situation. From a policy perspective, there are a few likely factors at play. First, fiscal pressure. The cost of old age security is one of the largest and fastest growing expenditures in the federal budget. As the population ages, more Canadians are becoming eligible for OAS, and the total annual cost is rising. The Parliamentary Budget Officer has projected that OAS spending could increase from roughly $70 billion annually today to over $100 billion within a decade. In an environment where the federal government is running deficits, where interest payments on debt are rising, and where there's political pressure to control spending, it's not surprising that officials are looking for ways to tighten eligibility and reduce costs. Second, program integrity. The government will argue, and has argued, that these changes are about ensuring that benefits go only to those who truly qualify. They'll point to cases of fraud, of people claiming residency they didn't actually have, of documentation issues that have led to overpayments. That's a legitimate concern, but critics counter that the vast majority of OAS recipients are honest, law-abiding Canadians who have earned their benefits through decades of residency and work in this country. Third, demographic reality. Canada's pension system was designed when life expectancy was lower, when the ratio of workers to retirees was higher, and when the economic environment was different. Today, we have more retirees, living longer, drawing benefits for more years. At the same time, we have a shrinking ratio of working-age Canadians paying into the system. This creates a structural challenge. The CPP is funded and sustainable, but OAS is funded from general tax revenue. And that makes it politically and fiscally vulnerable. So what are experts saying? Pension policy analysts have expressed concern about the lack of transparency around these changes. Dr. Susan Eng, a longtime advocate for seniors' rights and former vice president of CARP, has stated that the government needs to be far more upfront about changes to OAS and CPP, especially when those changes could reduce or delay benefits. The National Pensioners Federation has called for parliamentary hearings to review the new OAS verification requirements, arguing that they could disproportionately harm vulnerable seniors who don't have the resources or knowledge to navigate a more complex application process. Provincial governments, particularly in provinces with large immigrant populations like Ontario and British Columbia, are watching closely. Some provincial ministers have privately expressed concern that these federal changes could push more seniors onto provincial income support programs, transferring the cost from Ottawa to the provinces. Meanwhile, financial advisors and retirement planners are scrambling to update their models and advice. If CPP benefit enhancements are delayed, if OAS eligibility is harder to prove, if clawback thresholds are effectively lowered through income inclusion changes, that affects retirement income projections for thousands of Canadians. So what should you do? If you're approaching 65 and planning to apply for OAS, start gathering your documentation now. Don't wait until the month you turn 65. Start 6 months early. Collect Canada Revenue Agency notices of assessment going back as far as you can. Employment records, T4 slips, records of employment, rental agreements, mortgage statements, utility bills that show your address over the years, immigration documents if you're a permanent resident or naturalized citizen, any other proof of physical presence in Canada. If you don't have complete records, contact Service Canada early and ask what alternative documentation they will accept. If you're already receiving OAS and your income is near the clawback threshold, review your income sources with a tax professional or financial planner. Understand how the new income inclusion rules may affect you and consider strategies to manage your taxable income, such as income splitting with a spouse, if applicable, or adjusting the timing of RRIF withdrawals. If you're planning to start CPP in the next year or two, and you were counting on the enhanced benefit amounts, revise your retirement income plan. Build in a buffer. Don't assume the exact dollar amounts you read about 2 years ago are still accurate. And most importantly, stay informed. These kinds of regulatory changes often evolve. There may be further adjustments, clarifications, or even reversals depending on public and political pressure. Looking ahead, what can we expect? In the short term, I expect we'll see more seniors facing delays or complications in their OAS applications. We'll likely see more appeals, more requests for reviews, and possibly more media attention as individual cases come to light. In the medium term, I think there's a strong possibility of further changes to OAS, particularly around the age of eligibility. There have been discussions in policy circles for years about gradually raising the OAS eligibility age from 65 to 67. The previous conservative government attempted this, and the Liberals reversed it, but the fiscal math hasn't changed. The pressure is still there. For CPP, the enhancement will continue, but expect the rollout to be slower and more cautious than originally planned. The government and the CPP Investment Board will prioritize stability and accuracy over speed. More broadly, Canadian seniors and near retirees need to accept a new reality. The pension and benefit system that existed 10 or 20 years ago is changing. It's not collapsing. Canada still has one of the better public pension systems in the world, but it's under pressure, and that pressure is going to result in more changes, more complexity, and more responsibility placed on individuals to understand and navigate the system. Here's the bottom line. The government has made changes to old age security eligibility verification, adjusted income rules for OAS clawback, and delayed certain CPP enhancement benefits. These changes are real. They affect real people, and they require attention. If you're a Canadian senior or you're planning to retire soon, you cannot afford to be passive about this. You need to understand what you're entitled to. You need to gather your documentation. You need to plan your retirement income carefully. And you need to be prepared for a system that is more complex and less generous than it used to be. This is not about fear. This is about awareness. The more you know, the better decisions you can make. I'll continue to follow these developments and bring you updates as they happen. If this video helped you understand what's going on, please subscribe to this channel. Share this video with any friends or family members who might be affected, and leave a comment below. Tell me your concerns. Tell me your questions. Let's have a conversation about what Canadian seniors are facing, because the more we talk about this, the more pressure there is on government to be transparent, to be fair, and to remember that these aren't just policy changes. These are people's lives. Thank you for watching. Stay informed, and I'll see you in the next one.